We often fall into the trap of viewing our lives as a series of completed chapters, events that happen, resolutions that are reached, and memories that are neatly shelved away. We have this collective narrative that healing is a destination, a finish line we cross where we suddenly feel cured of our past. We treat our emotional landscape like a project to be finished, a broken appliance to be repaired, or a task to be checked off a never-ending to-do list. We think, once I work through this, I will be back to normal. Once I reach that point of acceptance, the sadness will evaporate. But if you are sitting here today, still feeling the sting of something that happened weeks, months, or even years ago, you might feel like you are failing. You might look at your own heart and see a map of old scars and think that you are behind, that you should be further along, or that there is something fundamentally wrong with your process. I want to pause right here and tell you the most important thing you will hear today. That feeling of lingering is not a sign of failure. It is the sign of a life being lived fully. You are not a broken machine that needs to be fixed. You are a human being who has been touched by change, by loss, and by the complexity of existence, and those things leave marks. These marks are not flaws. They are evidence of your capacity to care, your capacity to be impacted, and your capacity to hold space for your own story. We live in a culture that is obsessed with moving on, with the idea that the faster we put something behind us, the stronger we are. But there is a quiet, profound truth that we rarely talk about. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is not to move on, but to sit exactly where you are. When you feel like you aren't over it, you are actually experiencing the depth of your own capacity for memory. You are experiencing the reality that the things that shaped you don't just disappear the moment they end. They become part of the architecture of your spirit. The exhaustion you feel, the frustration when a familiar ache returns at the most inconvenient time, the sadness that crops up when you thought you had finally found your footing. This is not an indication that you have regressed. It is an indication that you are still in the process of metabolizing your life. You are taking what happened and allowing it to settle into its proper place within you, rather than just forcing it into a corner to be forgotten. It is incredibly common to feel this friction between where you think you should be and where you actually are. You might feel a sense of impatience, a desire to just get to the other side, so you can stop feeling the weight of the past. But that impatience is often just another form of self-judgment. It is a way of saying, I shouldn't be feeling this. But what if you stopped saying that? What if you realized that the calendar turning is not a signal that your heart must also turn? Your internal clock operates on a different frequency than the one on the wall. Your heart has its own seasons, its own periods of dormancy, and its own times of growth. When you fight against the fact that you still feel hurt, you are fighting against the natural tempo of your own healing. You are essentially trying to rush a season of winter into spring. And all that does is create a sense of internal coldness and isolation. True healing doesn't require you to be finished with your pain. It doesn't require you to be over it. It only requires you to be willing to hold it. Imagine your hurt, not as an anchor dragging you back, but as a part of your story that is still being written. The fact that it is still there means it still has something to tell you, something that is still unfolding. When you stop pressuring yourself to be done, something shifts. You might find that the pressure you've been carrying, the pressure to perform wellness or to hide your vulnerability, is actually much heavier than the pain itself. By acknowledging that it is okay to still be hurting, you drop the weight of the resistance. You finally grant yourself the grace to be human in all your messiness, in all your depth, and in all your glorious, unfinished beauty. You are exactly where you need to be. The process is not a line, it is a circle. And every time you return to the center of your own experience, you are not failing. You are simply learning what it means to be whole. Think about the sheer amount of energy it takes to hold back a wave. Picture yourself standing at the shoreline, arms outstretched, trying to push the tide away, day after day, hour after hour. It is a monumental, invisible task. This is exactly what we do when we try to force our hearts to be somewhere they aren't ready to be. We spend our best hours, our most creative energy, and our precious mental bandwidth trying to outrun our own history. We stay busy to avoid the silence where the memory might surface. We scroll, we work, we clean, we organize, and we fill every possible crack in our schedule. On that box we've packed our feelings into, we tell ourselves, if I just don't look at it, it isn't happening. If I just act like I'm past this, eventually I will be. But that performance, that constant, internal, low-grade, defensive maneuver, is slowly draining you of your life force. It is an exhausting way to exist. You are essentially living in two places at once. You are physically here in the present, but a significant portion of your heart is stuck in a sentry position, guarding the past. You are keeping a part of yourself in a state of constant, bracing readiness, just in case the hurt tries to break through. Imagine how much lighter you would feel if you could simply put that armor down. Imagine what you could do with the energy you currently spend on suppression. When you spend all your time trying to outrun your own pain, you don't actually leave it behind. You just teach yourself to live in a state of perpetual flight. You keep it right there, nipping at your heels, because it is always following the person who is running from it. We often think that by ignoring the pain, we are being strong. We confuse suppression with resilience. But true strength isn't about how much you can hold back. It's about how much you can hold with you. When you are constantly fighting, your nervous system never gets the signal that it is safe to rest. You are living in a state of high alert, and that wears the spirit thin. It makes you irritable. It makes you tired. And it makes it harder to connect with the joy that might be right in front of you. You might find yourself snapping at the people you love, or feeling a sense of dread for no apparent reason, simply because you are using up all your reserves just to stay upright while suppressing your own reflection. What would happen if you simply stopped? What if you decided that you were no longer willing to be at war with your own feelings? The exhaustion you feel isn't because you are weak. It's because you are fighting a battle that you were never meant to win. You were never meant to conquer your own feelings. You were meant to integrate them. Every time you stop to breathe, to acknowledge the weight without judging it, you are stepping out of the fight. You are taking a breath that isn't labored by the need to hide. You are choosing to be gentle with yourself instead of being a drill sergeant, barking at your heart to move faster. You deserve a break from that fight. You deserve the relief that comes from simply saying, I am tired, and that is okay. You don't have to keep proving to the world or to yourself that you are unaffected. Being affected by life is not a flaw. It is the most honest way to exist. When you let go of the resistance, you might be surprised to find that the wave you were trying to hold back wasn't going to pull you under. It was just going to wash over you, cleanse you, and then recede. The resistance is what keeps you anchored in the storm. The surrender is what allows you to eventually float to the surface. It is time to stop the defense, to let your shoulders drop, and to allow yourself the grace of being tired. You have been carrying this for a long time, and you don't have to do it for one more minute. You can just put it down. You can just be here, exactly as you are, without the need to be anything else. There is a profound, almost tectonic shift that occurs when we stop viewing our pain as an unwanted intruder. For so long, we look at our heartache as a thief, something that sneaks into our day, steals our focus, and ruins our peace. We treat it like an enemy combatant that must be apprehended, restrained, or chased out of our internal house. We think that if we can just figure out the right way to think, the right books to read, or the right routine to follow, we can finally banish this feeling for good. We want to be the kind of person who is untouchable, who remains unbothered by the echoes of the past. But what if the hurt isn't an intruder at all? What if, instead, it is a guest, a messenger arriving on your doorstep with a letter that you haven't quite learned how to read yet? There is a powerful insight from Carl Jung that touches on this. What you resist persists. It is a deceptively simple sentence, yet it carries the crushing weight of everything we have spent our lives trying to avoid. When you resist your pain, you aren't actually getting rid of it. You are just feeding it your attention. You are validating its power over you by making it the thing you are most concerned with suppressing. If you spend your day fighting a fire, you are still surrounded by the heat, and you are still consumed by the flames. But if you stop fighting, if you sit down and look at the fire, you start to see it for what it truly is. What if this lingering hurt is simply the way your internal world is trying to signal you? When we go through a hard season, we often leave parts of ourselves behind in the chaos. We abandon our own needs to survive the storm, or we shut down our capacity for feeling to keep from falling apart. When the dust settles and the danger has passed, those parts of us, the parts that were hurt, the parts that were silenced, the parts that were never comforted, don't just disappear. They stay in the corners, waiting. They show up as this lingering, ache-like feeling, a persistent pull on your sleeve that says, "I am still here. I was never heard." This is the shift in perspective. You stop asking, "Why is this still happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me about myself?" It is the difference between being a victim of your emotions and becoming an observer of them. You start to see the pain as a map. Where does it live in your body? What situations seem to wake it up? What does it feel like when you finally stop trying to shove it back into the dark? It requires a tremendous amount of courage to look at something you've been trained to fear and say, "I am willing to be with you." It's an act of radical kindness. By shifting your gaze, you aren't saying you love the pain. You aren't saying you enjoy the discomfort. You are simply removing the barrier between your awareness and your experience. You are moving from a state of rejection to a state of reception. When you stop fighting, you take the power away from the intruder and hand it back to yourself. You realize that you are the host of this experience, and you have the strength to invite these feelings in, sit with them, and hear what they need. It is not about letting the pain dictate your life. It is about letting the pain inform your life. It is the beginning of a much deeper, more authentic dialogue with your own heart, one that replaces the coldness of resistance with the warmth of understanding. We often imagine our lives as a clean, chronological narrative, moving from one event to the next, neatly tied off with a bow. We believe that once a specific conflict is over, or a particular season has ended, it ceases to exist. We view the past as a fixed point behind us, but the anatomy of unresolved hurt is rarely so obedient. It doesn't stay in the past. It lives in the present, tucked away in the quietest, most vulnerable corners of our nervous system. Consider how you handle a significant transition, the ending of a long-term partnership, a sudden shift in your career, or the quiet closing of a door on a dream you once held dear. We have a tendency to compartmentalize these moments. We feel the initial impact. We experience the distress. And then, because life demands we keep going, we put those feelings into a mental box. We tape it shut, label it with a date, and tuck it away on a high, dusty shelf of our memory. But feelings are not static objects. They are living, breathing echoes. They don't just stay in the box. They leak. You know the feeling. It's that sudden, inexplicable tightness in your chest when you're doing something as mundane as folding laundry or waiting for an elevator. It's that flash of irritation that flares up when someone says something minor, causing you to react with an intensity that feels out of proportion to the moment. It's the inexplicable exhaustion that hits you on a Tuesday afternoon, dragging you down into a fog you can't quite explain. These aren't random occurrences. These are the leakages of the past, breaking out of their boxes because they haven't been truly seen or honored. What we often fail to recognize is that this unresolved hurt is not just a collection of sad memories. It is a stored physiological experience. Your body remembers what your mind tried to pack away. When you suppress the initial sting of a change, the energy of that emotion doesn't evaporate. It remains stuck, waiting for a moment of safety or a trigger that mirrors the old situation to emerge. This is why you might find yourself stuck in a loop. You aren't reliving the past. You are feeling the unprocessed resonance of it. It's like a song that keeps playing in the background of your life. You might not be singing the words, but you are constantly dancing to its rhythm. When we look at the anatomy of this hurt, we see that it is often rooted in the parts of us that were forced to adapt too quickly. Maybe you had to move on before you had the chance to grieve. Or perhaps you were told that your sensitivity was an inconvenience. Because we didn't have the space to process these experiences at the time, they remain frozen in a state of unfinished business. This is why a simple comment can feel like a deep cut, or why a small shift in your current environment can send you into a spiral of anxiety. The present moment is acting as a catalyst, pulling on the loose threads of that old, unaddressed hurt. Understanding this is not meant to make you feel fragile or overwhelmed. Rather, it is an invitation to be more compassionate toward your own reactions. When you feel that sudden spike of emotion, or that heavy, lingering sadness, try to pause and recognize it for what it is. A part of your story that is finally coming forward to be acknowledged. You aren't overreacting. You are responding to a history that you have been carrying in silence. The anatomy of your hurt is complex, layered with the remnants of every time you had to be strong when you wanted to be soft, and every time you had to move forward before your heart was ready. By identifying this, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer just a person being pushed around by sudden waves of feeling. You are someone who is beginning to understand the landscape of their own heart, learning to identify the places where you were hurt, and realizing that these old wounds are not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the fact that you have survived and that you are still here, ready to integrate those pieces into the person you are becoming. We fight the pain because we are fundamentally terrified of the depth of our own inner world. We have been conditioned to believe that if we touch the wound, we will lose our ability to function. We live in a world that applauds the kept together, the people who can hold their professional and personal lives in perfect, stable balance, regardless of what is happening underneath the surface. We fear that if we open that box we've been keeping on the high shelf, everything will spill out. The grief, the anger, the confusion, the exhaustion, and that once it's out, we will have no way to put it back. We fear that the flood will be so intense that we will drown in it, or that if we stop doing and start feeling, we will never find our way back to the shore. But this fear is rooted in a misunderstanding of what emotions actually are. We treat feelings like they are permanent states of being. Like if we feel sad, we will be sad forever. We assume that if we acknowledge the hurt, it becomes our new identity. But feelings are actually more like weather patterns. They are transient, moving, and ever-changing. The fear of being consumed is a natural, protective mechanism of the mind, which is trying to keep us safe by keeping us numb. The mind thinks that by avoiding the pain, it is protecting us from harm, but it doesn't realize that by keeping us from the pain, it is also keeping us from the parts of ourselves that are waiting to be healed. We fight the feeling because we have been taught, often quite subtly, that to struggle is to fail. We have internalized the idea that if we are doing the right things, meditating, working, staying active, or being productive, we shouldn't be feeling this way. There is a sense of shame attached to the persistence of our pain. We feel as though if we were just better, or wiser, or more evolved, we would be over this. So, we suppress the sensation, we judge it, and we push it down, hoping that if we just act normal enough, the reality of the hurt will stop being true. But the more we fight, the more we validate the idea that the pain is dangerous. We are essentially telling ourselves, this feeling is so big and so bad that I cannot survive it. And in doing so, we shrink our own world. There is a profound difference between feeling your emotions and being consumed by them. When we fight the feeling, we are trying to control it. And control is just the opposite side of the coin of fear. But when we allow ourselves to feel, we are doing something entirely different. We are simply letting the sensation move through the body. We are saying, I am here, and this feeling is here, and we can exist in the same space without me having to be destroyed. It is an act of reclaiming your own power. You are not a victim of your emotions. You are the space in which they occur. Most of us have spent a lifetime avoiding our own depth. We've been taught that if we aren't doing something to fix the problem, we are failing. We are so used to the constant hustle of fixing, solving, and resolving that the idea of just being with an uncomfortable sensation feels like a waste of time, or worse, a dangerous indulgence. But there is an immense, life-changing difference between fixing and feeling. Fixing is trying to get rid of the pain. Feeling is allowing the pain to be recognized so that it can finally change. You don't have to be a master of your emotions to survive them. You just have to be a witness to them. You don't have to fix the pain to be whole. You just have to be willing to acknowledge that the pain is there and that you are big enough to hold it. When you stop fighting the feeling, you stop fighting yourself. You start to see that you are the container, not the contents. And in that realization, you find a kind of freedom that no amount of fixing could ever provide. Embracing your heart is not a grand, dramatic gesture. It doesn't require you to climb a mountain or have a breakthrough in a single, life-altering moment. It is actually much quieter than that. It is the practice of choosing to stay in the room with yourself when things feel difficult. Usually, our default reaction to internal pain is an immediate retreat. We run to our phones, we bury ourselves in work, we fixate on the future, or we numb out in ways that keep us safely distanced from our own experience. We are experts at leaving ourselves the moment we start to feel something unpleasant. The practice of staying present is simply the act of coming back. It is the gentle decision to stop the retreat, turn around, and sit with whatever is happening inside you. The next time you feel that familiar ache, that heavy, sinking sensation in your chest, or that tightening in your throat, try to notice the immediate impulse to turn away. You might feel a sudden urge to get busy, to distract, or to judge yourself for feeling this way again. Just catch that impulse for a second. Instead of acting on it, stop what you are doing. Even if you are in the middle of a busy day, take 5 seconds. Find a place where you can just be still, even if it's just sitting in your car for a moment or standing by a window. Take a long, slow breath, not to change how you feel, but just to acknowledge that you are here and you are feeling something. You don't need a complicated technique or a specific philosophy. You just need to offer yourself the same presence you would give to someone you deeply care about. When a friend is hurting, you don't offer them a quick fix or a lecture on how they should be feeling. You just sit with them. You offer them your steady attention. You let them know that they are not alone in their discomfort. Why is it so impossible to offer that same quality of presence to your own heart? When you feel that ache, say to yourself, I am feeling this right now, and that is okay. It sounds small, almost inconsequential, but it is a radical act of self-trust. It tells your nervous system that you are not going to abandon yourself just because things have gotten difficult. By staying present, you are breaking the cycle of shame. When we push our pain away, we are essentially telling that part of ourselves that it isn't welcome, that it is a nuisance or a weakness. But when you stay, you are extending an invitation to your own experience. You are saying, I see you. I am with you. That simple act of recognition takes the teeth out of the pain. It changes the experience from an overwhelming surge that threatens to drown you into something that you can hold, observe, and eventually move through. You will likely find that you can only do this for a few seconds at a time at first. That is perfectly fine. You don't need to stay with the pain for an hour. You just need to stay for as long as you can manage with a sense of compassion. If the feeling becomes too much, it is okay to step away, but do so consciously. Tell yourself, I am going to take a break now, rather than just drifting into an unconscious distraction. This is a practice of building a muscle. You are learning that your inner landscape is a place you can inhabit, not a place you need to flee. You are learning that you are the steady ground, and the pain is just the weather moving across the sky. By staying, you are slowly teaching yourself that you are stronger, more patient, and more capable of holding your own life than you ever imagined. You are building a home within yourself that is large enough to hold all of your experiences, the heavy ones included. We often speak of moving on as if we could simply walk away from our own history, leaving it behind like a house we've moved out of. We treat the past as a separate place, something that happened over there, and is no longer relevant to who we are today. But the reality is that we don't leave our history behind. We carry it forward, folded into the very marrow of our identity. Integrating the past isn't about deciding which parts to keep and which to discard. It's about acknowledging that every experience, especially the ones that caused us pain, has been woven into the fabric of who we have become. When we try to edit our story, to prune away the parts that hurt, we accidentally diminish ourselves. We lose the depth, the texture, and the hard-won wisdom that only comes from navigating the difficult seasons. As Carl Jung famously noted, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This is not a task that happens in a vacuum. You cannot become your full, authentic self by only looking at the parts of your life that were easy or pleasant. To become who you truly are, you have to be willing to look at all of the pieces, even the ones that feel jagged, sharp, or uncomfortable. Integrating the past means bringing those hidden, ignored, or rejected pieces into the light of your current awareness. It means looking back at your own story, not with judgment or regret, but with the curiosity of someone who is finally ready to understand their own life. It is the process of saying, "This happened, and it left a mark, and that mark is part of my landscape." When you stop fighting the past, you stop being a stranger to your own experience. You begin to see the connective tissue between where you were and where you stand today. You see that the pain you felt during a previous period of change was actually the catalyst for the strength you possess now. You see that your sensitivity, which you might have viewed as a weakness, was actually a sophisticated way of navigating a difficult environment. Integrating the past is the process of collecting all those scattered pieces of yourself, the parts you were ashamed of, the parts you tucked away to please others, the parts that were wounded, and bringing them back home. It is about realizing that you don't need to fix your history to be worthy. You just need to own it. This isn't about wallowing in what has been, or getting lost in a cycle of what-ifs. It is about a grounded, intentional kind of presence. Think of it like organizing a vast, cluttered library. You aren't burning the books. You are finally reading them, understanding them, and shelving them in their proper place. You are acknowledging the narrative arc of your own life. When you do this, the past loses its power to ambush you. It stops being a ghost that haunts your present and becomes instead a teacher, a foundation, and a deep well of perspective. You are a mosaic made up of 1,000 different moments, the quiet ones, the loud ones, the joyful ones, and the ones that left you breathless with hurt. To integrate your past is to finally see the entire image, not just the pieces that you find most palatable. It is the realization that you are not the sum of your mistakes or the sum of your tragedies. You are the one who has survived all of it. You are the one who is still standing, still learning, and still growing. By looking at the entirety of your history with kindness, you are finally giving yourself the permission to be whole. You are taking responsibility for the entirety of your existence, and in doing so, you are standing a little taller, grounded in the reality of exactly who you have been. and exactly who you are becoming. It is the most honest work you will ever do, and it is the only way to truly be free. There is a profound loneliness in the way we often treat ourselves when we are struggling. When we feel that old, familiar ache resurfacing, that sense of being overwhelmed, lost, or just plain tired. Our first instinct is often to become our own harshest critic. We look at our own sadness and we scold it. We tell ourselves to get it together, to stop being so sensitive, or to just focus on the future. We speak to our own hearts with a level of coldness we would never dream of using with a friend, a neighbor, or even a stranger. If someone you loved came to you with a heavy heart, you wouldn't tell them they were failing. You would listen. You would offer them a quiet space to just exist. You would let them know that their feelings are valid and that they are safe with you. Why is it so much harder to offer that same quality of care to the person who has been there through every single step of your life? You? Reparenting is essentially the art of becoming the person you needed when you were younger, or perhaps even the person you still need right now. It is the practice of stepping in as your own primary source of safety and compassion. When you feel that old hurt rising up, you have the opportunity to stop the cycle of self-judgment and initiate a new, softer internal dialogue. Instead of reacting with irritation that you are still hurting, try responding with curiosity and warmth. Ask yourself, what do I need right now to feel safe? Maybe you need to step away from your responsibilities for a few minutes. Maybe you need to allow yourself to sit in the quiet without feeling the need to do anything. Maybe you just need to acknowledge the ache and tell yourself, I hear you, and it's okay that this is still difficult. This isn't about ignoring the reality of your current responsibilities or indulging in self-pity. It is about emotional regulation. By speaking to your own heart with patience and kindness, you are soothing your nervous system. You are acting as a steady, reliable anchor for yourself. When you were younger, you may have been taught that your needs were an inconvenience or that your vulnerability was something to be hidden. Reparenting is the process of unlearning that lesson. It is the realization that your needs are not a burden. They are a map to your own well-being. When you feel that surge of emotional pain, you are essentially feeling the part of you that still carries that old, neglected vulnerability. By offering yourself the kindness you were seeking, you are finally giving that part of you the nourishment it missed. You can start this practice in the smallest of ways. It can be as simple as the tone of voice you use in your own head. When you make a mistake, or when you find yourself caught in a loop of sadness, try using the same tone you would use with a small child who is scared or tired. You wouldn't demand they perform. You would comfort them. You would remind them that they are allowed to be tired. When you bring that level of tenderness to your own inner dialogue, something shifts. The defensiveness you usually have against your own pain begins to melt away. You stop being an adversary to yourself and start being a partner. This is the most direct way to heal the parts of us that have felt neglected for too long. It is a slow process, and you won't get it right every single time. There will be days when you default back to your old, critical ways. And that is okay. The goal isn't to be a perfect parent to yourself. The goal is to be a present one. Keep showing up. Keep offering that gentle, steady voice. Every time you choose compassion over criticism, you are building a new foundation of self-trust. You are telling yourself that no matter what you are feeling, you are worthy of your own care. You are becoming the safe harbor you have been looking for. And in doing so, you are creating a sense of wholeness that you carry with you, regardless of what the world outside is doing. You are finally home. We have been conditioned to use the phrase moving on as a synonym for letting go or forgetting. It suggests that if we aren't leaving the past behind, like baggage discarded on the side of the road, we aren't truly progressing. We hear, "It's time to move on," and we interpret that as a demand to stop feeling, to stop remembering, and to effectively excise a piece of our own history. But moving on is a myth that keeps us stuck in a loop of trying to outrun our own shadow. It assumes that our life is a linear path, and that if we look back, we might trip or lose our way. But what if we stopped trying to move on and started moving forward instead? There is a profound difference between the two. Moving on is about subtraction, leaving behind what is painful. Moving forward is about addition, incorporating what we've been through into the tapestry of who we are becoming. When you move forward, you don't have to leave anything behind. You don't have to get over the things that shaped you, because those experiences are the very foundation upon which you now stand. You can hold your history in one hand and your future in the other. You can carry the weight of a difficult loss and still have the mobility to reach toward something new. It is not an either-or scenario. It is an and scenario. You can be someone who still carries the sting of an old hurt, and you can simultaneously be someone who is deeply engaged with the present and open to the possibilities of tomorrow. You can have a heart that is heavy with memory and still be someone who finds beauty in the morning light. Trying to get over things is often an act of self-violence. It's telling the part of you that still feels the pain that it is unwelcome, that it is a hurdle, or that it is an error in your programming. But when you choose to move forward, you are making a choice to integrate. You are saying, "This happened, it changed me, and I am still here." You are acknowledging that you are not the same person you were before the hurt occurred, and you are not trying to be. You are a person who has survived, a person who has deepened, and a person who now understands a little bit more about the fragility and the resilience of the human heart. That is not something you leave behind. That is something you wear, like armor, like wisdom, like a quiet kind of strength. Think about the way you walk through a forest. You don't ignore the ground beneath you, the trees that have fallen, or the path that has been worn by years of weather. You walk through those things. You navigate the terrain as it is. Moving forward is an act of grounded navigation. It means you walk through your life, fully aware of where you have been, but with your eyes fixed on the horizon. The hurt doesn't disappear. It just becomes a landmark. It becomes a part of the landscape of your life. When you reach a point where you can look back at a painful chapter without needing to get over it, but instead acknowledging it as a part of the journey, you have achieved a kind of peace that moving on could never offer. You can have a productive, fulfilling, and vibrant life without being done with your healing. You don't need to reach a state of total resolution to keep building your life. You can work, you can create, you can love, and you can laugh, while still carrying the quiet, echoing truth of your own experience. It is not about leaving parts of yourself behind. It is about gathering all the pieces, even the ones that feel heavy, and choosing to keep walking. It is the realization that your life is not a race to a finish line where you are finally cured. It is an ongoing, evolving, and beautifully complex journey. You are the architect of your own movement, and you get to decide how you carry your history. Carry it with grace, carry it with patience, and keep moving forward exactly as you are. You aren't losing anything by moving forward. You are gaining the ability to exist fully in the present, while still honoring the person who walked through the fire to get you here. You are doing far better than you give yourself credit for. I know that in the quiet moments, when the noise of the day fades away, it can be so easy to focus on the distance between where you are and where you think you should be. You might feel the weight of your history and interpret it as stagnation. You might look at the parts of your heart that are still healing and mistake them for signs that you are falling behind. But I want to remind you that your worth has never been defined by how quickly you can process your pain or how neatly you can put your past away. You are a human being, not a project. And the fact that you are still here, still showing up, and still willing to consider the idea of embracing your own hurt is, in itself, a victory. Healing is rarely a loud or explosive process. It is almost always quiet, slow, and often remarkably messy. There is no script for how this looks, and there is no guarantee that it will move at the pace you want it to. There will be days when the heavy feelings lift, and you will feel a sense of lightness that makes you believe you've finally reached the turning point. And then, there will be days when the weight returns, unexpected and thick, and you feel as though you are right back at the beginning. But please know that this is not a loop of failure. It is the natural rhythm of the process. You are not starting over. You are continuing. Every time you turn toward your pain with even a sliver of kindness, you are deepening your capacity for self-compassion. Think about the sheer courage it takes to look at your own discomfort and say, I am willing to stay with this. Most of the world spends their entire lives running in the opposite direction. The fact that you are willing to pause, to look, and to acknowledge your own experience shows a level of strength that is rare and beautiful. You are doing the hard, invisible, and deeply transformative work of becoming whole. It is a lifelong endeavor, And it is something you should hold with immense patience. You don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to be healed by a certain date. You just have to keep being yourself in all your depth, in all your complexity, and in all your vulnerability. Be gentle with the days when you feel exhausted. Be kind to the parts of you that are still learning how to trust again. Give yourself permission to be exactly where you are today, without the pressure of needing to change anything. You are learning a new language of self-respect, and it takes time to become fluent. You are worthy of your own care, whether you feel like you have it all figured out, or whether you feel like you are still trying to find your footing. The path you are walking is yours alone, and every step you take, even the ones that feel tentative, is a step toward a deeper, more authentic connection with yourself. You have survived everything that has happened to you so far, and you will survive whatever comes next. There is a deep, quiet resilience woven into your spirit, even if you can't feel it in this exact moment. You are more than your hurt. You are more than your history. You are the one who is witnessing your own life, the one who is choosing to stay present, and the one who is capable of holding all of your experiences with grace. So, take a deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. Acknowledge how far you have already come, not by how much you have fixed, but by how much you have lived. You are doing the work. You are making the space. And you are becoming whole, one quiet moment at a time. Be proud of that. Be patient with that. And most of all, be kind to yourself as you continue this journey. You are exactly where you need to be.